The rains over Corpus Christi and Houston have finally stopped, and floodwaters are beginning to recede. Some residents are still stranded, while others, tens, maybe hundreds, of thousands, won't be able to return to their homes for weeks and months. Meanwhile, the race to capitalize on the disaster, to redistribute wealth upward, and to transform the region has already begun. While rain was still falling over much of southeastern Texas and southwestern Louisiana, Patrick Gleason took to the editorial section of Forbes to propose the now expected Republican, and increasingly Democratic, response to natural disasters: suspend the Davis-Bacon Act and cut wages in order to spur reconstruction efforts. For many who survived the Katrina crisis 12 years ago, Gleason's words will sound disturbingly familiar. He advances the same flawed recovery approach that the Bush White House and local politicians took in Louisiana. They rolled back labor and environmental protections, guaranteeing wide profit margins for corporations like Halliburton and Bechtel while creating a deeply uneven and unjust recovery process. New Orleans has seen an entrepreneurship boom since Katrina, with individual startups outpacing the national average by 68% in 2013. And yet the city's child poverty rate still sits higher than the dismal numbers for the state of Louisiana overall, not to mention the nation. 3 out of 5 renters spend more than 30% of their monthly income on housing. American liberals find themselves in uncharted waters with a social disaster on the scale and complexity of the South Texas floods. As the popular outrage over Charlottesville showed, liberal anti-racism retains powerful currency in many corners, but, when confronted with ruling class power and less social media friendly subjects, like wages, collective bargaining, workplace safety, and other issues that have direct material effects on the lives of millions of working people, many of those same voices fall silent. Gleason voiced his preferred solution to Harvey's destruction in a seemingly novel way, claiming that living wages are racist. For those unfamiliar with its provisions, the Davis-Bacon Act requires federal construction projects to pay prevailing wages for workers. In areas with strong building trades unions, like Southeast Texas, it effectively mandates that reconstruction efforts after national disasters pay living wages. Gleason cites George Will's June 2017 column, which details Congressman Robert Bacon's racist motivations, and follows Will's historical reasoning that the legislation's origins forever taint it. This conclusion not only sweeps aside the decades of civil rights and labor reform that transformed the application of Davis-Bacon but also ignores the efforts of people like Will and Gleason to undermine such progress. In this way, Gleason and Will echo a cohort of self-styled progressive historians and political scientists who describe the universalist policies of the New Deal and Great Society eras as inherently flawed because of constraints imposed on them by segregationist congressmen. They also obscure the years of struggle it took to bring some people under the protection of these laws. Thus Gleason uses racism, not contractor profits and upward redistribution, to justify his suggestion that President Trump immediately suspend the Davis-Bacon Act. In moments like this, when others want to turn crisis into opportunity, we need a clear-headed understanding of class power and a practical commitment to working class interests. We already know what will happen if Hurricane Katrina is any guide, and if it's not to anyone with a pulse and an ounce of morality or a basic understanding of our political situation, it should be. The suspension of Davis-Bacon may not be the absolute worst thing that can be done in rebuilding a city for its residents, more on that in a moment, but it certainly ranks high on the list. Living wages for returning residents serve as the foundation for any just recovery from a disaster of Harvey's magnitude. High wages in reconstruction work provide employment opportunities for residents whose workplaces are slow to reopen or will close permanently. Good pay puts money in the hands of those who need it most and allows the tens of thousands of displaced people to return quickly. All the while, it puts upward pressure on wages in other industries, thus helping everyone return and rebuild. When he waived Davis-Bacon, George W. Bush was once again following in his father's footsteps. H.W. took the same deregulatory action in 1992 after Hurricane Andrew, which swept across South Florida and Louisiana, and Hurricane Iniki, which struck Hawaii a few weeks later. In the weeks after Katrina, the W. Bush administration handed out lucrative, non-competitive contracts to White House-friendly firms and instituted measures that weakened labor protections. The Department of Labor suspended federal wage